People disappear all the time. Disappearances, after all, have explanations. Usually. Well, I seem to have fallen through time.
Outlander is a historical adventure that features a beautiful romance and is this very exciting journey through the Scottish Highlands.
There's adventure, there's battles, there's romance, there's historical side, there's the supernatural side.
We went out of our way to say, you know what, we're not going to reinvent the 18th century. We're not going to try to make it cool and hip for today's audience. We're going to try to convince you that this really happened to this woman.
I have to get back to the stones.
Ron's a very smart guy. What he said to me was, this has to be a faithful adaptation. He says, it's my wife's favorite book. I don't dare screw it up.
I really responded to the central character of Claire. I respected the fact that Diana chose not to make her a time traveler who was really stupid. Claire does not go into the past and start asking people for the telephone.
Where is it? Where's the city?
Inverness. You're looking straight at it.
Outlander is the story of Claire Randall, who is a Royal Army nurse during World War II. She's in the Scottish Highlands with her husband Frank on sort of a second honeymoon.
I think we both felt a holiday would be a convenient masquerade for the real business of getting to know the people we'd become.
In the course of the story, she comes upon a circle of standing stones at a place called Cradnadun, and she touches one of the stones and finds herself suddenly transported to the year 1743 in the Scottish Highlands.
With that one moment, suddenly anything feels possible within the parameters of the story.
When confronted with the impossible, the rational mind will grope for the logical.
The first person that she encounters turns out to be the great-great-great-great-grandfather of her husband Frank, a man called Black Jack Randall, who looks exactly like Frank.
Black Jack is the baddie. But it's not that clear. If Frank is his descendant, then surely there must be some goodness there.
Frank? You're not Frank.
She's constantly looking for the Frank within Black Jack, but I don't know whether it exists.
She's then rescued by a band of Highlanders, and in the course of things, she meets this young man, Jamie. He's a very honorable man. He's very headstrong. He sort of is always compelled to do what he thinks is the right thing.
We should go. I shall pick you up and throw you over my shoulder. Do you want me to do that?
He has a price on his head, and he's been living for a time with his relatives, the Mackenzies, in Castle Leigh.
She gets thrust into this world where they speak a foreign language. It's an alien world to her, and to the viewer it will be as well.
The impact she has, it's like a planet getting hit with a meteor. It's enormous. So the impact which Claire has on the clan is terrific.
It's also about a time in which guys were like real men. You definitely see the differences between the men and the women so much clearer than today, and it's very sexy.
We're going to a very tumultuous time in history. We respect the history of Scotland and the history of the British Redcoats, and we try to present them in an authentic light. King George II is on the throne, and there's a lot of fighting around the edges about the restoration of the Stuarts, and the Jacobites are trying to restore the Stuarts to the crown of England.
There's a sense of foreboding when you find out about what's going to happen to these clanspeople, to this way of life.
What will happen is the British will essentially massacre the Highlands at a battle called Culloden.
The use of Gaelic was forbidden, the wearing of kilts, the bagpipes, the clan whole culture was basically eradicated.
So essentially, Claire is entering a world that is doomed. The heart of the show, obviously, is between Claire, Frank, and Jamie. The relationship between Claire and Frank at the beginning of the show is a good one, and then suddenly she's pulled away. She's with Jamie, which at first he's just a friend, but nonetheless there is a spark between the two of them.
In this world that's quite brutal, he has such an emotional openness and an emotional intelligence, and that's something that really sets him apart from everybody else. So she sort of went with how she felt and then developed this beautiful love story.
I should go.
Wait.
Casting Claire was difficult. We considered a lot of people, and we never quite saw exactly who we were looking for until we saw the tape that Katrina submitted, and suddenly there was Claire.
Ta-da! We cast her probably 3 weeks before we went into production. It was down to the wire, and we were very nervous.
Because the entire show is shown from her point of view, she's the hardest working of all of us. She still has a great sense of humor on set.
Those roles don't come along very often, so it was just, yeah, it was really exciting. I think her resilience of spirit was something that really attracted me.
I'm not going with you.
Yes, you are.
What? Are you going to cut my throat if I don't?
The character of Jamie in the books is certainly the ones that the fans talk about the most. In the writer's room, we call him the king of men because he's so perfect in so many ways. And we figured we would never find this guy. Suddenly, you saw Sam Heughan's tape, and there was the guy.
Sam's just this really solid, gentle person, and it was just very easy from the beginning.
He's too good looking.
He's far too good looking for this time.
It's devastating.
He's got all his appendages.
You're feeling good about yourself until you turn up.
Exactly.
He's always very aware that Claire had this love and he doesn't want to compete with him.
Frank and his ancestor Blackjack are united through time and bloodline in that they are from the same family.
Here's this man who reminds her so much of her husband, and I think that she constantly is looking for that part of Frank within him.
Your husband, what's his name?
We all knew Tobias's work. We had him read scenes for both Jack and Frank, and there was a shading and there was a difference between the two, and they were subtle things.
In a way, I think the challenge of the casting of it is to go to the audience, it's the same actor, and then let them find the difference.
There's an aspect, you know, of Jack's fascination with Jamie that verges into the sexual and into the sadomasochistic. Part of it has to do with his fascination with Jamie's ability to endure pain.
His darkest secret is that the act of inflicting pain is something that is curious and interesting to him.
There's a lot of inner conflict that will play itself out over the course of the season.
He wanted to send a message. This is what you get, and you fight back against the English.
Our show is a love letter to Scotland. We wanted to shoot here because we wanted to sort of capture some of the essence of this country.
Every location sort of blows your mind in some way, because it's so beautiful.
I have a great love of Scotland, and it's just a joy to be able to bring this to the world.
Scotland is a very big character within the story, and the sort of the ancientness of this part of the world, the sort of mysticism that has sort of built up around it.
Apparently, there's a circle of standing stones on a hill just outside the village, and there's a local group who still observe rituals there.
There is an element of magic or fantasy in the show. We don't want to make the show about that, but there is this piece that propels the entire story.
You go from what clearly is a sort of period story, and suddenly all the possibilities of the narrative are completely opened up by this one event.
It's an ancient country, and it has a lot of superstitions and history, and I think you get a sense of that when you're working here or when you come to visit.
There's a tremendous amount of research that goes into the physical production of the show. Structures, buildings, furniture, props, all of those details are as authentic as we can make them as well. We farm out a lot of work to people, local artisans that make everything from baskets to the weapons on the show to people who weave cloth according to old traditions.
I'm really pleased that people who went to Glasgow School of Art and places like that have had a chance to use these skills.
We've employed so far over 600 different people. We see it as being something both an investment for Outlander going forward, but also to the Scottish industry and to the local community as a whole.
You walk onto the Great Hall set and you just feel like you've been transported to another time. And every time we go on location, Gary and his team just transform these places.
On Outlander, we're trying to recreate the feel of the book, but also make it period correct and show how people lived back then through the use of locations or sets that we build.
My favourite set is the kitchen at Castle Leoch. I think it was beautiful. It had a really lovely double archway which we could shoot through. I thought it looked great.
Every time I walk onto set, there's at least a split second where I feel like, this is not a set, this is actually real, you know? It's like a kindergarten for an actor. It's so rich, it's really amazing.
Even down to the tiny details of Gary and his team took molds of the actual Dune Castle, which we used the exterior for Castle Leoch, and used those molds to create the stones inside our actual sets. It's small details like that that I think make you feel like you're actually there.
One of the favorite locations so far was where we shot the stone circle.
What's fascinating about that location, there's been human habitation there, we know, for over 2,000 years. So this is a place with a historical resonance that just felt right for our stones.
It was incredible because we were filming this part at the stones, and every time I turned my head when I heard this kind of buzzing, the wind would whip up, and it was just so kind of eerie.
I've been on some locations here, and you look out at the set, the horses and the carts and everything, and you think, yeah, I am in 18th century Scotland. And that helps when they say action, and you have that all around you.
We put all the actors through boot camp to sort of teach them how to fight, how to use these kinds of weapons, and also how to ride horses.
I just think there's better modes of transport than a horse. I'd rather walk.
I had to work out a lot. I had to put on weight. I had to acquire new skills, from horse riding to sword fighting to speaking Gaelic.
There's been a distinct lack of ambition in Scotland for our language and culture for a long time, and it's very important that Gaelic made the next step up, and Outlander is it.
I was very proud to be able to find in myself the language of my forefathers and practice it. So boot camp becomes what you do during the day, and you have evening boot camp, which is in the pub.
Morning. Our costume designer is Terry Dresbeck, who also happens to be my wife. Terry did a lot of research and was suddenly telling me things that I didn't know. The fact that the tartans that we think of as tartans are not really authentic to the period.
On a practical level, those bright-colored tartans wouldn't have worked. If you look like you're part of the earth around you, your enemy's not going to see you, the animal's not going to see you, you know, you're camouflaged. So that's how we came up with the direction we went in.
Terry's just fantastic. We had a lot of discussions about, you know, the type of woman Claire is and what she would wear and wouldn't wear.
This is a woman who's all about survival. So we have kept her pretty true to a very clean, working 18th century costume.
She just was so adamant about sourcing the right materials from Scotland.
We went out to Scottish artisans and found out what they were doing. And a lot of the knit pieces you'll see on our characters came from weavers on little islands in Scotland.
Ron and Terry and the others wanted to make sure that this looked real, so that we are dirty, we're gritty looking, and the costumes are the kind of things that they actually did wear.
It all starts with the word. The word started there. None of us would be here today, and this is her world, and so welcome to Castle Leoch.
Oh, thank you.
People who are fans of the book are really going to love this. We were just expanding the world of Outlander and providing a really sort of vibrant, lively companion to it.
There's an extensive fan base for Outlander that's developed over many years. They are committing themselves to this because it's something that touches their heart.
I think it's that we all just so believe in the story, and if we could fall through the stone, we all would.
The fans are absolutely beside themselves with ecstasy at the thought that someone is finally putting it on the screen.
I love that the history just keeps going from one event to the next, and the characters just keep getting richer and richer.
They're huge fans of Diana's books, but they've been so sweet that they've sort of brought us into that fold.
Seeing different people from all over the world come together, make this extraordinary story come to life, there's the magic.
The show constantly changes your expectations. You think it's one thing, and then it takes you in a different direction.
The more the audience believes in the world that you're creating, you can take them anywhere you want to go.
You tell people the story that they want, just not in the way that they expect. And that's Outlander.
Look on!